This podcast episode is brought to you by Coors Light. These days, everything is go, go, go. It's nonstop hustle all the time. Work, friends, family, expect you to be on 24/7. Well, sometimes you just need to reach for a Coors Light because it's made to chill. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged. It's as crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. It is literally made to chill. Coors Light is the one I choose when I need to unwind. So when you want to hit reset, reach for the beer that's made to chill. Get Coors Light in the new look delivered straight to your door with Drizzly or Instacart. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
Welcome to The Timeline, a Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike Vigil, and what a week of games. Sam Cooper, how are you doing?
Staying positive as always, Mike, or at least trying my best. Absolutely nothing is wrong with this franchise. There are no negative things to talk about, and we're going to have just a fantastic time talking about the Phoenix Suns for the next hour or so.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't sure. We were trying to think of what we were going to talk about early on this week, and enough has happened that we have enough to talk about. Unfortunately, it's just not all fun and exciting things to talk about, but it still needs to be talked about. We are, after all, a Phoenix Suns podcast, and ultimately Phoenix Suns fans, and that's actually what we wanted to start this conversation with. First off, the state of Phoenix Suns fans. Sam, you had some things you wanted to talk about with that. What do you think of how Phoenix Suns fans are reacting to this stretch of games?
Yeah, well, it's kind of unfortunate, Mike, because I think we've seen it before over the past few years, but especially in this current stretch, that the fan base is so broken. Everyone's spirit seems to be broken, and it's resulted in all of this toxicity online, whether it be on Reddit or Twitter, other social media platforms, other websites and blogs and forums. I think this is really the height of the most toxicity I've seen just spewn between fans of opposing sides. And it's almost made me, as you know, I think most people who listen to this podcast know by now, we are moderators for the Suns Reddit. It's made me just want to go online less and less over the past week or so, because it's really sort of unfortunate what's happening with this fan base right now. I guess my response to all of these people who are really arguing with each other constantly and being at each other's throats, despite all being fans of the same team, would be that this is supposed to be fun. Being a fan, it certainly may not look like it right now when you watch, the Suns score 9 points in 2 consecutive opening quarters, but this is supposed to be fun. And if sports are consuming your life to the point where you're just finding yourself becoming increasingly bitter and angry, even at people who share, for the most part, the same goals that you do, I would say that's probably a sign that you should maybe start to take a step back, relax. You don't need to follow every game religiously. I don't think anyone would blame any Suns fan right now for taking this stretch of games as an excuse to check out for a little bit and just remind yourself that it's not the most serious thing in the world, because seriously, right now online, Suns fans are just constantly at each other's throats.
Yeah, and what do we expect from a team that's missing its 2 best players? I mean, I understand not only when we have our 2 best players are we one of the worst teams in the NBA, but without them, we are by far the worst team in the NBA. And maybe that's not entirely true now that the Chicago Bulls got beat by 50-something points, but we are definitely one of the worst. And I think, if anything, this stretch of games, which has included 4 losses since the last time we spoke, has proven that the Suns fan base is not really built for this. And in a sense, maybe we should be, because it's been such a disaster for the last few years. But when your owner fires your general manager at the beginning of the season and follows that up with an interview on the radio that says the switch needs to be flipped, and now it's time, the switch is flipped, we've got our number 1 pick, we finally got what we tanked for. The expectation is not that we're going to win. I don't think that Suns fans were that delusional. But I think the expectation was we are now a competitive team, or at least can show some competitive spirit well on the court. And I think the last few games, what's hard about losing hurts no matter what. But what's hard about losing like this is that there hasn't been a lot of hope shown on the floor, especially from some of the young guys who have played. So actually, let's start to get into it a little bit. So the games that happened since the last time we spoke, Lakers, Kings, Blazers, and Heat, all 4 losses. Devin Booker went down with a hamstring injury early in the Lakers game, which will likely have him out for approximately 4 weeks is the expectation right now. So we're about a week into that. And then, of course, the other games without Devin Booker and TJ Warren, who's out with an ankle injury. So pretty brutal stretch of games, right, Sam?
Yeah, it's been really rough, and that's why I say I understand why people are frustrated. I don't enjoy watching these games right now.
They're not fun, and why would they be? You know, when Sean Al-Shadi, he was on our podcast a few months ago, and he said, we're all teammating now. And that's something that stuck with me. I just like that phrase. Just remember that the other Suns fans you're talking to, even if you disagree with them, they're kind of your teammates. We're all on the same team. Like, we already have to endure all the fans from the other teams sort of stepping in and letting us know that things are already going really bad for us. And then we have to endure the national media that either ignores us entirely or only writes about us to say bad things or negative things. Let's not do that to each other. How about that? Let's see. Let's get into these games. Now, the Lakers lost, no surprise, I think. The Kings lost. The Kings are playing much better than we expected, so I think that was no surprise. And the Blazers and Heat, of course, without Devin Booker and TJ Warren, there's no real expectation for things to go well. So what we wanted to talk about is what we've learned from these games. So the first thing I want to talk about is DeAnthony Melton. So DeAnthony Melton actually got some playing time. Isn't that nice?
Yeah, that is really nice. And look at how he responded.
Yeah, what do you think about how he's played?
Really, I don't want to say really well. He's played fairly well. Of course, there was the 21-point effort that we could talk about. Overall, in the past 3 games, Igor Kokoshkov has rewarded him with a lot of playing time, and he's shown exactly what I think we expected, which is defensive intensity and hustle constantly, even when the team is down by 15, 20, 25 points. Surprisingly, he's showing off his 3-point stroke, too. I think that's one of the things that a lot of Suns fans were concerned, or a lot of just NBA draft scouts in general were concerned about him coming into the league. And it's a really small sample size so far, but over the past 5 games, he is shooting 44% from 3-point range, a little bit over 10 points, about 4 assists. So if there are any positives to highlight from this past week, DeAnthony Melton is where you start, I would think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we finally seen some passing, some good passing. He had some good plays. There was a nice drop-off pass to Rashawn Holmes that got some play online. Some interesting things that sort of defensively that he's able to do. I think that it's clear, although he played relatively well through a lot of these games, I think it's clear that he's not sort of the answer when Devin Booker and TJ Warren are back. But at this point, I think he's showed enough to try and start him next to Devin Booker. So we've seen him play a lot, but we haven't seen a lot of minutes with DeAnthony Melton next to Devin Booker. And where DeAnthony Melton fits in this team likely would be next to Devin Booker, because Devin Booker, as we know, not the best perimeter defender, a great offensive threat. And DeAnthony Melton can sort of make up for that defensive mistakes, or the defensive flaws, I should say, that Devin Booker has. The other thing DeAnthony Melton does that not a lot of our point guards really do is push it in transition. We've talked about this in the last few weeks. The Suns are not near one of the fastest teams in the NBA. In fact, they're in the bottom 10 of the NBA. In the previous seasons, they were in the top 10 in pace. So this is sort of a new thing for the Suns to not be one of the faster teams in the NBA. Not having point guards is likely one of the big reasons for that. And when Devin Booker's playing point guard, he's not the type of guy to run it down underneath and keep his dribble well looking for other players. It's just not the way he plays. He's more likely to slow it down and run a few high pick and rolls to try and find the right guys. So DeAnthony Melton coming in and pushing the pace, that could make a difference. What else did you notice from these last few games, Sam? Or what did you learn from these last few games?
On the positive side of things?
Either way, I think. That'll be hard.
Let's try to continue to start with a positive. Let's talk about the God, I can't believe I'm about to say this. The Troy Daniels resurgence that we've seen over the past 5 games, if you want to call it that. And I understand it's hard to get excited over empty points, if you will, that are coming in blowouts. But Troy Daniels continued to do what I think we all knew he was capable of, even though he wasn't really getting any playing time in the first stretch of games this season. He's averaged 12.6 points per game over his last 5, shooting 49% from three-point range. Perfect from the free throw line, although it's Troy Daniels, so he doesn't really get to the free throw line in the first place, just like the rest of the players on the Suns. However, this maybe brings up an interesting question of does Troy Daniels deserve minutes when this team is at full strength, and is there a sort of role that he could fill on this team that is currently not being met? Mike, I don't know what you think about that, but I figured it might be interesting.
Well, I was an advocate for Troy Daniels looking good in the type of system that Igor ran previous to being the coach here on the Suns. With DeAndre Ayton on the team, a lot of what Igor ran with Slovenia is completely different with what he runs for the Suns, in that there's a lot more of the big, which is Ayton in this case, catching the ball in the high post and sort of playmaking from that position, which is still great and still can get shooters open, assuming we have shooters. But when he was running that offense for Slovenia, there was a lot of guards that were cutting, sort of jump cutting or cutting off of down screens to open shots, which I'd like to see more of. So I think Troy Daniels should play more in general, and maybe even take some of those. I hate to pick on him now that we're trying to stay positive, but maybe even take some of those Josh Jackson minutes, because Josh Jackson, he's not been good. He just hasn't been good. And I don't know. Look, I don't know at this point of the season if we're even going to try to win more games, but I know that when Devin Booker is back and on the court, he wants to try to win games. So there's this weird balance, and this is the same thing that we've been dealing with for the last few seasons, and I think that's why Suns fans are so frustrated right now, is that we expected to move on past this, but there's this delicate balance of, is it worthwhile to play these guys? Like in the past, it was Marquise Chris and Dragan Bender and Josh Jackson last season. Is it worth it to play these guys, even though they're a negative on the court? Because the minutes, in theory, we haven't really seen this play out with anyone but Devin Booker and TJ Warren, but in theory, the minutes that they're given could likely prove beneficial in the future when they develop into more effective basketball players. Now, the question is, are those minutes actually beneficial for Josh Jackson? And if we are trying to win, even though Troy Daniels doesn't do much, but what he does do is elite, which is shoot threes. It's elite, and that is not an exaggeration. He's one of the best catch-and-shoot shooters in the NBA. And we've seen that he's also developed in this last, about the end of last season, and I saw him work on it a lot on Instagram throughout the offseason. He's developed the ability to pump fake and take a dribble or two and then shoot off the dribble from three. Nothing like a point guard, but enough to actually affect the defense in a way that helps the Suns on offense. So the question is, would Troy Daniels be more beneficial for this team on the court than Josh Jackson? And that is a really sad question, first of all, because Josh Jackson was a number 4 pick overall, and he should be more beneficial to the team. But I don't know. What do you think about Josh Jackson? He's got a lot of run in these last few games now that Devin Booker and Tony Warren Jr. are out of the lineup here. But I don't know if it's really shown. I don't know if he stepped up. What do you think about Josh Jackson?
Putting Josh Jackson in a situation where he has to play, like, let's take it back to the end of last year, the Jay Triano Suns, when the Suns went, 3-27 in their last 30 games. And Josh Jackson was putting up, let's be honest, empty numbers in 35 minutes a game. Those minutes are not helpful to his development. We see, all of these step back, mid-range, inefficient jumpers. We see bad efficiency numbers from him across the board. And I don't think that helps anyone. It's unfortunate, though, because, we did see Josh Jackson get to play with a healthy Devin Booker in like a small stretch of games after Josh Jackson was benched by Igor and came back. In that stretch of games where he was only playing like 15 to 20 minutes, he was actually playing pretty well. His efficiency wasn't great, but it was better. He was showing a lot of defensive intensity, which you're not going to get from Troy Daniels. And I honestly think that was a good role for Josh Jackson. That's exactly where I want to see him. I was almost even ready to praise him because during that stretch of games, he really started to limit his turnovers. We saw a lot of games from him where he was only getting 1 or 2 turnovers in 20 minutes per game, which for Josh Jackson is a lot of progress. Unfortunately, now Devin Booker and TJ Warren are both out. TJ's coming back very soon. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But as long as Devin Booker is out, you thrust Josh right back into the 30-minute per game role. And as soon as I was ready to praise him for limiting his turnovers, in the last 3 games, he commits 4, 5, and 6 turnovers because he just can't create for others in the way that we would like from him right now. So it is unfortunate. He's got so many holes in his game. But when the Suns are at full strength, I do think there's a role for Josh Jackson as a low usage, high defensive intensity player who can come off the bench. And I don't necessarily think Troy Daniels should take those minutes. Is Josh still a net negative on the court? Maybe. But you have to believe that those minutes are going to contribute to some positive development for the future.
Well, first off, every player is a net negative on the court for the Suns right now, technically. If we're just looking at numbers, there's not a single player. I know.
There was that small stretch where we could cling on to the Mikal Bridges net rating king, right? But it's fading now.
Yeah, that's just the truth. And Mikal, well, we should get into Mikal a little bit here because Mikal had a fun week. There was a couple things that happened. My most retweeted tweet I've ever had was a clip of Mikal Bridges and Igor Kokoshkov. I described it as Igor Kokoshkov playing defense on Mikal trying to get to the bench. It almost looked like he was blocking him from getting to the bench. Mikal clearly frustrated for many reasons. One, he's always played on winners. For the record, I mean, he's a guy that won 2 national championships in college, and I'm sure he's been one of the best players on any high school team he's ever played on. And I'm sure they were great with a guy like Mikal on the team. 2, a frustrating stretch for him. His shot has sort of left him a little bit. He's still done really well on the court regardless. He's the type of guy that doesn't need his shot to be effective. What makes him a top 10 pick is that it'll come back. I'm not super worried about his shot overall. We've talked about his ability to create and how much that'll affect him. Not worried about it. When Devin Booker's on the floor, there's a lot more space available, and I just think he's going to start hitting those shots again. But coming off the court after being frustrated, well, first off, before he came off the court, I should say, he hit one shot, a mid-range shot, which as we know is rare with Mikal Bridges, and immediately turned around and looked at Igor Kokoshkov and shouted every time, twice to him. Now, there's been some debate online on what that was about. Some people say he was fouled. It looked like he was fouled on the shot, so it could have been that he was looking at Igor and saying, hey, I'm getting hit every time. And well, first off, what I would say to that is, and we should talk about this before we even go on with the rest of the story here, Sam, but one, if he was shouting every time saying he got fouled, why was he doing that at Igor Kokoshkov? Either he doesn't want to yell at the refs because he doesn't want to get into it, or do you think it's possible that he thinks his coach should be standing up for him more? Or the theory floated by EJ and K-Ray, who were calling the game, is that he wants the ball more and he believes he can hit that shot if the play was run for him every time. So did you see that clip, Sam, or were you watching the game, or did you notice that? And how do you feel about that interaction?
Yeah, that's actually funny. I saw the clip. I didn't know about the EJ K-Ray theory of running the play every time. Yeah. It's not what I would have thought. I would have thought the former. I would have thought it was all about fouls. And by the way, I just want to throw out a quick question to you, Mike. If you had to guess, when was the last game this season, as long as we're talking about the Suns and foul disparities, when was the last game when the Suns had more free throws than their opponent?
Well, I don't know that stat. I would guess it was Dallas, the first game of the season.
It was, well, no, actually, not going back that far, but it was November 6th. Against Brooklyn. We're talking about like 15, 20 games. We're talking about a full month ago. A little over a full month ago is the last time. And that you can point to a couple things there. You could talk about the Suns being an undisciplined young team. You could also talk about how officials don't respect young players. And I certainly think that plays into the whole narrative we're talking about with Bridges. Well, we've seen it with DeAndre Ayton too, not getting respect from officials, not getting to the free throw line that much this season.
The Suns were top 5 in shooting free throws last season. They were one of the best teams at getting fouled. So I don't think that the young team thing is any excuse on there. There should be no reason for that. So let's just say we don't know exactly why he was yelling every time at Igor. 2 plays later, Mikal gets a down screen, comes around a curve, hits a 3, so back-to-back shots for Mikal, which is rare. To be frank, he's not. I mean, he's probably averaging 5 or 6 points a game. He just doesn't hit a lot of shots. So he hit another shot. He immediately turned around and looked at Igor Kokoshkov again, and was sort of saying things in his direction. K-Ray and EJ again said that he was asking for the ball more. So that was the sort of the story on the broadcast. Mikal then on the next play defensively gets his 5th foul, and as he's taken out of the game and going to the bench, that's when the weird, awkward Igor-Mikal dance happened, where Igor was clearly trying to coach him in a very frustrated moment for Mikal, and Mikal was brushing him off and trying to get off of him, and even sort of raised his hands like, hey man, like back off, what are you doing to me here, as he got to the bench. So what I did is, first of all, I watched that maybe 100 times to sort of see it. 1, for the comedic value because it looked hilarious, and 2, just to sort of analyze it from a body language perspective. And I don't make too much of it in general, but I did talk to some athlete friends of mine that have played at higher levels and about that clip, and generally the sentiment is that's a very interesting clip, and I understand the way Mikal the way he felt, I should say, in that moment, but I would never do that to a coach that I respected, was the response that I got, which I thought was an interesting response. And obviously it's difficult to understand the sort of interaction. We don't know either of these guys. We don't know what it's like, but it does seem like there's maybe Igor's having some trouble getting through to these guys at this point, and understandably so, as their team with only 4 wins. So how did you feel about the dance between Mikal and Igor?
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. Maybe that's stupid. I think any new coach, any rookie coach would have trouble right now, and I think it's way too soon to be saying things like Igor has lost the locker room, especially when we're talking about Mikal Bridges, a guy that was partially drafted because of his maturity as a junior coming out of college, and as a guy who played for a really well-respected program that found a lot of success and has been consistently praised for his maturity so far in the season for the Suns. So I'm really not worried about this. I don't know how many people saw the quotes coming from Bridges via Gina Mizell of The Athletic the next day, but I figure I should just read it out really quickly that Bridges said the next day just to clear things up. He said, quote, "I know how I was raised. My mom was even beating me up about it. We're good now. We talked about it and saw each other today like it really didn't even happen." Talking about Igor Kokoshkov. Now, that could mean whatever. That could just be good PR on the part of Bridges. But given that this is essentially strike one for him, this event that we're talking about right now, and we haven't seen anything else to suggest that he has some sort of discomfort around Igor Kokoshkov so far in the season, I'm really not worried, and I think we might be making too much out of this small event.
I think the weirdest response that I saw was people criticizing Mikal for it. I don't really think that anything. I'm not worried about it from that perspective at all. I am a little bit worried about Igor Kokoshkov in general, but it's not just because of that situation. Although I think that was it's just not great that the cameras caught that, and this team is in a low point already, and now that's something that went viral, partially because of me, I guess. And a lot of people around the internet sort of saw it and made a lot about it. But the other thing that Igor Kokoshkov did this week was bench DeAndre Ayton to start a game in favor of Richaun Holmes after a lot of criticism that DeAndre Ayton has received for not being aggressive enough. So there's 2 things to talk about here. One, they said Ayton didn't feel well, but then he played 35 minutes or something like that. So just as much as he would have played it had he started. So that seems a little weird to me. I don't believe them. Let's just say that. I'll just put it out there. I don't believe them. I think they benched him to try and send a message to him, and then they handled it really awkwardly in the media, and it makes us look like amateurs. And then 2, we should talk about it. Is DeAndre Ayton not aggressive enough? I think I would say yes, but what did you think about DeAndre Ayton being benched?
I don't know. and it's strange that I feel that way, but it's tough. I feel like it's a tough position for Igor to be in. I don't really know how I would have handled the same situation as a rookie coach. I mean, I definitely agree with a lot of fans who say that DeAndre isn't being aggressive enough. Let me preface that by saying I wouldn't go as far as some of the extremes that you're seeing on the internet. And I still think that what the Suns have in Ayton overall is pretty special for him to be putting up the type of production he is right now. But I kind of agree with you. It's hard to buy the story about the whole sickness, the whole lack of eating after a morning shoot around leading to him supposedly being benched, but then a few minutes before the game it turns out he can play, and so he checks in 3 minutes into the game. It just doesn't make a lot of sense all around. And I don't know, Mike, how do you feel about it? Because obviously I'm very conflicted on this one.
I think it's total bullshit, and I think they benched him to try and send a message to him. And I think that they're handling this all wrong, to be honest. I think that, for one, I think that a lot of what our coaching staff and especially our fan base is doing with DeAndre Ayton is asking him to do a lot of what he is not that great at. And those things that he's not that great at so far are creating for himself, catching the ball too far away and facing up. And then the sort of aggressive thing, I think a lot of the aggression is that he just goes up for a lot of layups, and maybe they consider, a lot of people consider that soft.
I do want to address.
Now, I just want to talk about offense first.
I do want to address
yeah,
that. That's total bullshit. You made a point. I don't remember if it was on Twitter or Reddit, but you made a point once where if DeAndre Ayton scored 5 fewer points per game, like he was averaging like 10 and 10 instead of 15 and 10, but those 10 points came on just, a bunch of dazzling posterizing dunks, that the narrative about him would be completely shifted, and that people would be, at least I think this was you, correct me if I'm wrong, but that
it was.
People would be so happy to see that sort of aggression out of him, when none of that stuff really matters at the end of the day. There's nothing wrong with being a finesse post player. It's defense that I'm worried about when you talk about aggression. And if you want to talk about how he handles being an aggressive player on that end, then I'm totally with you. But this whole offense thing, like DeAndre Ayton needs to know he's 7'1" and not 5'9". He needs to dunk over whoever's guarding him every single time down the floor. That notion is just ridiculous.
Yeah, for one, it's impossible. It's just not possible. These guys that he's playing against are massive as well. It's not like he's playing against a bunch of 5'9" guys on defense. They're just a bunch of other large NBA bigs. So fan base and coaching staff. So what's happened in these last few games is he does need to establish post position better off the ball. But when it takes us 10 seconds to get him the ball because we have no guards who are good at throwing post passes, it's difficult to hold that post position for a really long time. And he needs to be taught better on that. That's not to say that he can't improve there. He will, and I think he will by the end of the season. I think that's the type of thing that I think he's slowly getting better at. Part of that comes with just sprinting down the floor on change of possessions. And I think he's been doing that a little better in the last few weeks. But the other thing we're doing is we're telling him to be more aggressive, and it's clear that he's getting this message because he has to talk about it after every game. It's not just us talking about it online as Suns fans. It's getting to him. It's an actual message being told to him. And then he's pushed out 18 feet away from the basket, and they toss him the ball, and then he's expected to somehow create for himself 18 feet away. That is not his game. He's never been great at that. What he needs to do is run pick and rolls with a point guard that can actually get him the ball on the roll. And what we don't have right now is a point guard. And this expectation of him being overly aggressive and somehow that's going to fix all of his offensive troubles, it's just not true, and it's not going to work. And it's on the coaching staff too, because we need to figure out ways for him to get that post position. And there are plays, we've seen them run it in Philadelphia, there are plays that can get the post position quicker and actually give him the space that he needs to try and get that if we want him to create for himself in the post, which he's a lot better at than facing up. And when you're 18 feet away, you have to face up. When you're 10 feet away, you can post up. Those are the differences that we're running into right now. And part of it is that we're missing two of our best players. Yes, TJ Warren and Devin Booker are both gone. But this idea that his offensive struggles are aggression related and aggression related only, to me, that's complete bullshit. And I just don't like what we're doing with him right now. And part of me, a lot of what's happened this week is Ayton's played really badly without our other two best players, and understandably so. A lot of the defensive pressure is focused in on him right now. And all while that's happening, Luka Doncic is playing really, really well. Right, this is the sort of contrast that is driving Suns fans completely. I know, completely insane right now. But it's a highlight thing, right? Not all Suns fans are watching every Luka Doncic game. After all, we'll get to see one this week when we play the Mavs. But I know. So It's really difficult to contrast those two things happening all at once, because Doncic is actually very good at creating for himself, at least with that step back 3-pointer. He's not averaging great percentages, and these guys are both rookies and they're both kids, so it's difficult to even pair them against each other. But as one guy's struggling and the other guy's succeeding sort of on a national stage, and the Mavericks are winning a lot of games, it's been a rough week for Suns fans. But what do you think about Ayton's offense first?
It's been good. I have to agree with everything you said. We're just not putting him in a position to succeed right now. How do you expect him to excel when you take one of the biggest play types, the pick and roll, basically out of his arsenal? If he can't even be a rim runner because you don't have an effective point guard running that play with him, then there's really not much he can do. You're essentially limiting him to the post and to the face-up. And as you said, the face-up is currently not his game, especially when it's that 20-foot face-up from like a little bit past the elbow. It's a nice cherry on top sometimes when he has it going, but it's just not a way to create consistent offense in the NBA in 2018, and that's just how it is these days. But overall, Ayton has still been very good offensively. It's defense that we should probably touch on, because unfortunately, I hate to say it, not much has changed there with DeAndre at this point in the season.
What I've noticed with DeAndre, and this is sort of a symptom of being a Suns player, is when things start going really badly, defense just stops existing. And just sort of in general. And that happens with Devin Booker as well. If we're down by 10, we're down by 15, there's no fight. There's just no fight. And Devin Booker's gotten a lot better at that this season, to his credit. And I think that DeAndre Ayton will get better at that over time. But it's sort of shown in these last few games that once things are out of hand, there's no aggression at all. And if we're talking about aggression defensively, that absolutely is a DeAndre Ayton problem. And that needs to get fixed. And I'm not sure how to do that, because that's a mentality thing. It's on the coaches as well, but sometimes I just want to see him hammer a guy. Just send him to the ground. Just do it once, every once in a while, just to send a message. We had Shaq on the team. We've seen what it's like. There's a guy, one guy gets to the rim once. Okay, that's on me. Shaq would kind of say it. But the second time that guy goes to the rim, he's going to the ground. And that way, when he's going that third time, that fall is in the back of his mind. And, you get 6 fouls. Use them right. Don't get those cheap fouls on inbound passes or cheap fouls on post positions. Now, mind you, they call the game a little differently now. It's easier to get cheap fouls now than it's ever been. But I'd like to see more aggression on that end.
I do feel the same, but I also want to fight the narrative that I've also seen regarding the Doncic versus Ayton stuff, where people talk about how the knock on Ayton is defensive awareness and that can't be fixed, versus the knock on Luka is shooting and athleticism, and that's going to be just fine, which is something that I've seen that struck me as odd over the past few days. I just want to say DeAndre Ayton is bad on defense right now, and I absolutely agree with anyone who says that. He is bad. But there's some nuance to this conversation. Rim protection can be fixed. It is not something this early into his career where we just have to write him off and say that his rim protection is always going to be this bad. You look at Karl Anthony Towns and Nikola Jokic this season, 2 guys who have consistently been laughed at, frankly, for their poor rim protection throughout their first few seasons in the NBA. Both of them are much, much better this year. In fact, I pulled up the stats. Within 6 feet, in terms of how they allow opponents to shoot within 6 feet. Last season, Karl Anthony Towns allowed 61%. This year, he's down to 55%, which is actually quite good. Last year, Jokic averaged 67% is what he allowed opponents to shoot at the rim, which is basically a joke. That's what DeAndre Ayton is actually allowing right now, and it's a complete joke. And this year, he's down to 57%. So the notion that this is not fixable stuff 4 or 5 years into a player's career is ridiculous. And we have to remember with DeAndre, first of all, it's harder for him to create for himself being a center, the position that he plays at on offense, and that's certainly true. But also as it relates to defense as well, it just takes big men longer to adjust to the NBA game, and it's always been that way, and I don't see why that would stop happening anytime soon.
Yeah, even as Suns fans, we should remember that it took a while even for Amari Stoudemire to work on that face-up game. I made a point recently on Reddit that there's just not a lot of guys that are really good at that in the NBA at all right now. Giannis being the absolute best of the best, partially because he can dunk on anyone. Did you see his Blake Griffin
Yeah.
poster, by the way, where he just shoved Blake? Oh my God. That was amazing. Wow. We haven't seen a guy like that in a long time. It really is amazing to Blake. First of all, Blake is big. Second of all, he's very strong, and to push him like that underneath the basket and posterize the guy that's known as the guy who's posterized everyone else, that was really fun to see, especially as someone who is a little bit of a Blake hater in myself. So I liked to see that. I do have a hypothetical for you, and this is you're not going to like it. I'll warn you right now. In the current state, so without Devin Booker and TJ Warren, would the Suns be better with Carmelo Anthony on the team?
What, Mike? What are you talking about?
I'm making a point. I'm making a point.
So I have no idea what you're going to say. That's ridiculous.
I'm making a point of we are very bad, very, very, very bad.
No, stop.
And here's the other
You're
thing.
embarrassing
Here's the other
yourself.
thing.
You're embarrassing me.
I'm not saying that we would. I'm just saying that we might be, because he's a terrible player, and he still might be one of the better players on our team.
We
right
already
now.
have a
and
Carmelo
that's not a
Anthony
joke.
on this team. His name is Jamal Crawford. If you haven't noticed, I'm serious. And if you haven't noticed, since that Bucks game where Jamal, got to be the hero, and I admitted back then, I root for Jamal Crawford just like I root for any player with a Phoenix Suns uniform on, except for maybe Markieff Morris when he was, his last half season with the Suns.
At his worst.
Yeah, but other than that, I root for players with Suns uniforms on. But Jamal hasn't been great recently, and that's because he's regressed to the mean that we expect him to be at this point in his career. Carmelo would be exactly the same.
I mean, it doesn't help for a guy like Jamal Crawford if there's not a lot of shooting threats on the floor and you're trying to get into the paint and they just crowd the paint. There's not a lot of space to create your own shot. Very difficult. Now, I don't want Carmelo Anthony. It's just the Suns have 2 open roster spots right now with Isaiah Canaan being gone. And there's a lot of speculation as to what's coming. And I think that in 6 days from now, December 15th, I imagine we'll be recording a podcast about the new look of the team. And if we're not, there might be riots. There might be riots.
Yeah, well, I'd certainly hope James Jones is working all of the phones right now. It was nice, by the way. We haven't even mentioned it yet, maybe because he hasn't played, but Suns fans were getting really angry about that second two-way spot not being filled up until this point, and I was right there with them. But we did use it, so now Jawan Evans is on the team. So congrats to him. I hope we get to see him play, and I hope he shows us something promising.
Yeah. I'm not gonna hold my breath.
Yeah.
I bet if we took a poll on John Wall like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and then took a poll on John Wall now, as far as how Suns fans would feel, I'm guessing they're warming up to that idea a little bit more as the days go by. Now, I'm not saying that it's the best idea, but
if Devin stays out for long enough at this point, I bet you could trade for John Wall, still keep your top 7 pick or so, because you're not going to rise too far up in the standings right now.
Yeah, especially with the odds the way they work right now. I was thinking about the same thing. If we waited until the trade deadline and made a move for John Wall, there's a potential of the Suns picking a top 3 or top 4 pick and going into the season with John Wall, Devin Booker. We probably have to get rid of, I'm guessing TJ Warren would be the guy that would need to go in that case. And I think that's where it sticks, because he's got a great team-friendly contract and he's been so good, and he's one of the few success stories as far as who the Suns have drafted. So that would be difficult. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to give an update on the arena situation. A few podcasts ago, I broke down exactly what the Suns were looking at. Well, there's been some movement there, and then we'll preview these coming games for this week. So we'll be right back. Something I was thinking about recently is this the lowest point in Suns fans' history? So as fans, is this the lowest point that we've come to? Now, hear me out a little bit. Now, I'm not going to dwell on this because it's not fun to talk about, but we are a team that had finally drafted our number 1 pick. We have Devin Booker. We have some players that are worthwhile. We spent the last few years tanking and losing game after game after game and enduring some of the most brutal losses ever. We followed that up with 2 games where we scored less than 10 points in the first quarter, which is the first time in NBA history that's ever happened. Now, a lot of people online are saying, well, if every team loses their 2 best players, they would look this bad. Well, no, I think we have statistical proof that that's not true. It's the first time that's ever happened. That's never happened before. And we have an owner that appears to be completely out of his sorts and hopeless. And so I was just thinking about this. Is this the lowest point in Suns history? So that's a question for all of our listeners. They can reach out and give us their opinion on that. Or Sam, what do you think? Is this the low point for Suns fans?
Yes and no. What I mean by that is yes, in terms of the on-court basketball product right now is brutal. And if you look, Basketball Reference has the statistic SRS. It's basically a combination of average point differential, but also takes into account your strength of schedule. The Suns right now have a negative 9.93 SRS. That's the worst in team history, by far, actually, and would be the 16th worst season in NBA history. In case you're wondering, the worst is the 92-93 Mavs, who went 11-71. It's actually not the 7-59 Bobcats team from several years ago, even though they had a worse record. It would be the Mavs from about 15 years before that. However, in terms of team reputation, I want to make the argument that this is definitely not the worst point in Suns history, and that could always be worse. Because let's take it back to this was before I was born, the 87-88 Suns season. We could always say that the team wasn't that bad. This was right before the Larry Nance for Kevin Johnson trade in Cleveland that really shook up the team and sort of set the stage for the Suns becoming a very good team in the late 80s, early 90s. But just before that, you had all of Waltergate, which was, of course, Walter Davis sort of ratting on a few of his teammates, James Edwards, Jay Humphries being the 2 notable of the group. Who ended up being indicted for cocaine trafficking. So the Suns were embroiled in this sort of drug scandal, sort of happening in that offseason just before the 87-88 season began. And then that's not even the worst part. So first of all, you had these players being taken up in this drug scandal, some of them having to go to trial, which I believe it ended up Edwards and Humphries just joining a drug counseling program after the case fell apart. But then the other thing that happened that offseason is the death of Nick Vanos in a plane crash, along with either his girlfriend or his wife, I forget which one it was, in August. So to recap, you had an offseason in which about a quarter of the team was part of a drug scandal. Your backup center, who had just started a bunch of games before and looked pretty promising at the end of the prior season, died. And then at the very end of that offseason, just before it looked like the Suns maybe were at the point of being sold off to someone else and possibly being relocated out of Phoenix, you had Jerry Colangelo swoop in and buy the team for what was then like a record high $45-50 million, something like that, which is absurd to think about now. But that has to be the worst era of Suns basketball. I mean, imagine all of that stuff happening right now, a drug scandal, a death of a player, and almost being relocated all in one offseason right now in the social media age. You think the Suns' reputation is bad right now with what's going on with firing 80% of our front office and not filling those spots a quarter through the season. And so it's bad right now, but this is still nothing compared to what the Suns were at that point in history about 30 years ago now, even if the on-court results are a little bit worse.
God, we really got to get rid of Sarver.
We got to get rid of Sarver.
If you have to point at an offseason with a drug scandal and a player dying to find a worse situation than just a team that literally just drafted the number 1 overall pick, then that's pretty bad. Now, I will say we have hope now, at least, right? These guys are young and they could get a lot better.
We've got a number 1 pick. We've got a budding superstar in Devin Booker. Any of our listeners, I think we have admittedly a younger demographic, but if we have any listeners out there who remember being a Suns fan at that point in the 87-88 season, let us know. Find us online and let us know what you think is the lowest point in Suns history. And did the Suns have a worse reputation then than they do right now?
Also, if anyone knows how to get in touch with Rex Chapman, I would love to have him on this podcast because he's a pretty amazing redemption story and has a very entertaining Twitter. If people are not following him, he's very, very entertaining online. So, all right, Sam, I appreciate you bringing that up. That makes me feel a little bit better about this season so far. So an update on the arena. So quickly, the Phoenix City Council has sort of announced an agreement. It hasn't fully been voted on yet, but they announced an agreement that is in place where taxpayers will pay $150 million to help pay for renovations on Talking Stick Resort Arena, with a lot of that money coming from a tourism tax, which will be on car rentals and hotel rooms, which I found kind of funny and interesting. It's just they're sort of they found a way to sort of justify it, saying that a lot of Arizona residents maybe aren't going to be paying that. It's going to be coming from a lot of tourists who are coming into town. So that's interesting. The Suns actually will also chip in about $80 million and will pay to build a new practice facility, Sam, a new practice facility somewhere in the valley.
Yusuf?
So maybe when that happens, we
Salim,
got to get Yusuf on.
Someone reached to him for comment at Suns Twitter. I mean, sorry, at Suns Film on Twitter is what I meant to say. But he's been hoping,
and it should be
he's
said,
been hoping for this for a long time.
And for people who missed that episode, what he did, which was very interesting to me and also kind of funny, he broke down significant improvements from specific teams and pointed out that a lot of these improvements came after the team invested in a new practice facility. So correlation is obviously not always causation, but still kind of interesting in that a new practice facility. His point was, what it shows is a willingness to invest in your players. And sometimes I wonder if Sarver has been waiting to fix these things because he wanted to find a way to get taxpayers to pay for it, so things just got worse and worse and worse without any investment at all, because he wanted to come up with a deal before he started investing money in it. Well, now there is one. So the potential deal will keep the Suns in downtown Phoenix until at least the 2037 season, with an option to keep them in Phoenix until 2042. So this is a long time, and it could potentially quell any rumor of the team leaving, because the biggest issue with the team leaving would have been the arena. If the Suns do choose to break that agreement, they would actually have to pay the city $200 million, so more than the amount that was initially invested into the arena. So the city itself would actually profit off of the team leaving. And as we know, Sarver's not going to do that. He's not going to pay $200 million for that. So this should be finalized on Wednesday. So we will know in the next few days if this is finalized. But based on the reporting that's currently out there, the deal's in place. The votes are there. They're just waiting to finalize it on Wednesday. So it seems like the Suns are going to be in Phoenix for a long time, basically, over 20 years. And that should be good. It will help sort of calm a lot of people down a little bit, because it's been a stressful, of course, as the team loses and loses and loses. That's stressful enough, but the idea of those losses and the inability to renovate the arena leading to the team potentially ending up in Seattle, I don't think that's happening anytime soon. Do you have any thoughts on this new deal coming up, Sam?
We will get back to you guys with another update in 2037. You ever think about where you're going to be in 20 years? That's scary.
I don't want to think about that. Who knows if I'll survive if the Suns keep playing like this. More news on that soon, but next week it'll probably just be a rehash of what I just talked about, and we'll know going forward that this is the case. It will be very, very, very nice to have a new arena, and what some people are thinking is if Sarver were to sell, this offseason would be a nice time to do it, because he would have a star in Devin Booker signed up for 5 years, the number 1 overall pick in DeAndre Ayton, and a potential top 3, top 4 pick in this coming draft. And as far as, along with the arena about to be renovated. So as far as a good time to sell at high value, this would be a good one. I would say it would be a good one. Now, if it doesn't happen this offseason, I would say that we're probably going to be stuck with Sarver for the long haul. So get used to it and do whatever you can to try and get rid of him.
Yeah, well, as
I don't know what it would
NBA
take.
Teams get more and more expensive, though. I haven't looked at the most recent valuation of how much the Suns would go for, but imagining that it would be upwards of $1 billion, probably $1.5 billion, even $2 billion at this point to own an NBA team, the barrier of entry for any new owner continues to increase. So I think the main thing when you're looking for someone new to own the team is you have to actually start looking at the very small pool of actual candidate resident billionaires that are out there that could even buy the team in the first place. I don't know who that would be in the Phoenix area.
The governor. Ducey, the guy who started Cold Stone Creamery. There's not a lot of other guys. I've looked this up. Yes, that's how far the depths of my son's fandom have gone. I've looked up the billionaires in Arizona, and there's only a few. So Bezos, it's the only thing you don't know, and Jeff Bezos. Step in. I know you don't live in Arizona, but it's not often that a team will go on sale. And if you got $2 billion, this guy's like $100 billion. It's like nothing. It's barely a percentage of his wealth. And he's the type of guy who can turn this into a money-making franchise. So I can't imagine, and I don't know that this is the case, but I should say, before we go on to preview the next few games, the last few years the Suns have actually been profitable. And that's partially because Sarver doesn't spend money on anything, so he's found a way to turn this into a profitable team, even through the disaster that was the last few seasons. But if you look at the attendance so far this season, I can't imagine that this team is profitable. I just can't picture it. So I don't know that it is or it isn't, but it'll be interesting when those numbers come out, which they usually do after the season ends. We'll take a look at them on this podcast, and we'll try and figure out if this team is actually profitable for him at this point, being that it's his biggest business venture from my understanding right now. It being profitable probably matters a lot for him, and if it's not, maybe that could lead to him selling it. So fingers crossed. 4 games coming up this week: Clippers, Spurs, Mavs, and Timberwolves. So the rumors are
of these teams, believe it or not.
Yeah, the rumors are that T.J. Warren should or could be back for the Clippers game, which is the 10th. So that is Monday, followed by the Spurs game, which is the only game that is away. So there's 3 home games, and the Spurs game, which is away on Tuesday, which is a back-to-back. So Clippers, Spurs, back-to-back, Mavs and Wolves to end the week. Clippers, it's going to be rough. We've already played them before, and they're very good. We've seen it firsthand. There's just no bad players. It's just good guy after good guy after good guy coming at us at all points. Tobias Harris, of course, put it on us, and I'm sure he's going to do that again. I know you're a fan of this Clippers team. Do you have any thoughts on this game coming up?
I hate to sound like a broken record. It's going to be 0-4 even with TJ Warren. That's my prediction in basically every week from now on, as long as we continue to preview these games until Devin Booker comes back.
Yeah.
You talked about Tobias. He did really well. Danilo Gallinari absolutely lit us up last time. He had like 28 and 10. And Montrezl Harrell and Lou Williams are just an unstoppable 1-2 punch off the bench compared to anyone we have on our bench. So that's unfortunate. And the chances aren't good.
Yeah, the Clippers haven't really slowed down, but you know who has? The Spurs.
Yeah,
they look pretty bad. They don't look good. So the Spurs, I think, if out of all these games, even the Mavs, I think that the Spurs game is the most likely that we could win. The only problem is it's the only away game, and it's the second night of a back-to-back. So as far as teams in a vulnerable place, that's a good situation for the Spurs in this game. Some people call those schedule losses. It's just not a good place, especially with TJ Warren. If he does play at the Clippers game, he might not play in that Spurs game on a back-to-back, depending on how he feels. So hopefully our training staff is actually keeping these guys out of games long enough to fully heal, because it didn't seem like that was the case with Devin Booker previously. And I'm hoping that's the case with TJ Warren. So if he does play, hopefully it's at 100%. So that Spurs game, it's interesting. The Spurs have shot the lowest amount of three-pointers of any team so far, the lowest amount the Spurs have shot themselves over the last few years. They play a lot of that mid-range game. We know that their 2 best guys are LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan, but there are other guys like Rudy Gay. Those guys just like to shoot mid-range shots. So we're going to see a lot of mid-range shots put on us in that game. It's going to be an interesting one. Without Devin Booker, it's hard to believe that we'd win that game. Do you have any thoughts on that Spurs game?
Yeah, they're just kind of a hard team to place right now. The Spurs are about where I expected, maybe a little bit worse than I expected, given the star talent of DeRozan and Aldridge, but they just don't really play a modern game anymore, exactly. And they took some hard blowouts to teams like Minnesota, Houston, Utah, but then they've also beaten teams like Portland and the Lakers recently, so I don't really know where this team is. I would confidently say that they're still a lot better than us. And with it being a back-to-back, again, the chances aren't good, but you never know. They are hurting enough as of late that the Suns could maybe sneak one here.
And the next game, the Dallas Mavericks at home, the second time we're playing the Mavs at home this season. Luka Doncic coming to town.
So important for the narratives right here. The win-loss result doesn't matter, but the narrative does.
Which one do you want to win the most, right? It's got to be this one.
Yeah.
that's the one I want the most. Even in a week with the Spurs. Normally it would be the Spurs, but at this point, with the way the narrative's going, if the Suns get blown out by the Mavs, or if it's a close game and Luka takes over at the end of the game, it's going to be a whole season of the Suns made the wrong pick. The Suns made the wrong pick, which could be true. We won't know, I think, for years whether or not that's true. But Luka's looked good, especially in the clutch so far this season. One of the top performers in the clutch as far as shooting percentage so far this season. So that's an important game. But we've seen it before. The Suns, at full health, have some advantages against that Mavs team. They just really don't have anyone to defend DeAndre Ayton if he plays right. So that should be a good game for him. But we won't be at full health, so that'll be a tough game no matter what. And the Mavs are winning games right now, so no expectation to win that one. But if I had to choose one that I want to win, it would be that game. And the last game this week against the Timberwolves. Now, the Timberwolves have had a fascinating season. We've talked about them before. We talked about the Jimmy Butler trade when it happened. They're pretty good right now. They're playing really well. Of course, they have Dario Saric and Robert Covington. Robert Covington currently on the injured list, but based on the injury that he currently has, I'm guessing he will be playing by the time they are in town here in Phoenix. Robert Covington is already getting buzz for a potential Defensive Player of the Year award, so he's looking very good on the Timberwolves. Karl Anthony Towns has stepped up his offensive and defensive game. You just went over his rim protection stats. He's looked amazing since that trade. It's almost like they washed themselves that Jimmy Butler stink that was on them as he was trying to sort of ruin that franchise while he was there, and they've been playing relatively well ever since. That'll be a tough game. They got a lot of big guys to throw at us as far as guarding DeAndre Ayton. And as we know, not full strength, so that'll be rough. What are your thoughts on the Timberwolves coming to town?
Yeah, it's unfortunately tough. As you said, they've got a lot of guys to throw at DeAndre Ayton. And Covington, I think the Defensive Player of the Year nods right now are deserved with the way he's playing. He's averaging
absolutely
tad under 3 steals per game, over a block a game. He's basically giving them better defensive production. He's as good of a replacement as I could have gotten for Jimmy Butler. Let's put it that way. Certainly not the same type of shot creation, but just on the defensive end, he's been absolutely amazing. And he's a guy that they can easily stick on either TJ Warren or Devin Booker, regardless of which one might be healthy at that point, and he could shut them down. So that's going to be a big problem for Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a great offense even in general without Devin Booker on the floor. So add a guy like Robert Covington guarding whoever is the number one option on that any given night, and that's going to be rough. It's going to be difficult to create shots against that team, which is kind of crazy to say at this point with what we've known about the Wolves for the last few years. That's how big of a difference Robert Covington makes. That's going to be an interesting one. So I think we're both calling this a 0-4 week unless Devin Booker comes back. Is that right?
Hate to say it, but that's just where we're at right now.
Yeah, it is. Now, what I'm hoping, and I don't know that this is the case, but what I'm hoping is when we come back, probably on the 15th of December, maybe even what could be considered an emergency podcast, we're talking about a different roster here. Trevor Ariza might not be on the team. If I had to guess, I'm guessing Troy Daniels is the guy that will likely be moved, unfortunately, as well. Do you have any predictions, any thoughts of who could be on the team by next Sunday, by next Saturday?
Markelle Fultz? Do we think
Fultz?
Does it actually have legs? I mean, everyone's saying it at this point.
I think it's probably the most likely, right? Because we talked about the issues potentially trading for John Wall that make it difficult for the Wizards. It would cost them $20 million basically to get rid of him this season that they have to come out of pocket to pay on top of his normal salary that they paid up to this point. So that's unlikely. And who else is even available? George Hill just got moved. We could have taken that George Hill contract very easily and potentially played him at that point guard position. Clearly, we're not doing that. A pretty good trade. I think it's an interesting trade for the Cleveland Cavaliers as well. But clearly, that's not going to happen. I mean, who else is even available? I can't think of anyone else.
Yeah, there's no one immediately on the trade rumor.
Bledsoe?
No.
Now that they have George Hill on the Bucks,
not Bledsoe. Yeah, no, but you make a good point. There's no one else that's even necessarily available right now. I'm sure there are some names that are going to start being floated around there as we get closer to December 15th, though.
I mean, the best potential player available is Brad Beal, and I just don't think the Suns have the assets if he does become available compared to what other teams could give up for Brad Beal. So unfortunately, that's where we're at. So we'll see what happens next week. A very different conversation coming in all likelihood. So stick with it, Suns fans. We're trying to stick with it on our end. You got anything else, Sam?
Stop being mean to each other.
Yeah, be nice.
Play
We're all
nice.
teammates here.
Hey, yeah.
Be nice.
We all like this team. You can criticize this team because this team sucks, and we're sorry if we bum you out with these episodes at this point. But be reasonable about it in your discourse online. Shouldn't be too much to ask for.
Yep. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
I feel like if even 3 of us called in to report a sexual assault committed by Robert Sarver, police or investors, somebody has to do something.
You just wrapped up another episode of The Timeline. I love this podcast. And if you're like me, you want as much Suns content as possible. That's why I listen to The Timeline every week. So if you want to go ahead and hear some more Phoenix Suns content, go ahead and listen to The Solar Panel, a Phoenix Suns show. We are available on Spotify, on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Google Play. Anywhere that you listen to podcasts, go ahead and check out The Solar Panel, a Phoenix Suns show.
Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and Thomas Hearns. Legends, whose four-way rivalry defined one of the greatest eras in boxing history. Relive their decade of dominance in the new Showtime sports documentary, The Kings, a 4-part series premiering Sunday, June 6th, only on Showtime.